In this video, I want to take a look at the informal amendment process. We've looked at the formal amendment process, the actual changing of the words of the Constitution, and the requirements for those 2/3 vote of Congress, 3/4 of the states, legislatures having to agree. That's the most common way. But that's only happened 27 times, and 25 really if you count the fact that prohibition canceled each other out, and the first 10 of the Bill of Rights. So it really doesn't happen very much. So this informal amendment process is the process of changing through political or illegal means that isn't amending the words of the Constitution. For what reasons is the informal process the real key to 2 centuries of change? Because most of it's taken place through here. And what are several means of informal change? So this is where you should be, and the Constitution notes is where you should be. And what we're going to look at is this idea of informal amendment and executive agreement, and how these end up working. You may need to pause this video to see some of the notes, and I'm going to hide myself. I'm going to hide myself here so that I can do this more, so you can see it more easily on my screen. So an informal amendment is like the process by which changes have been made in the Constitution that have not led to changes in the document's written words. So in other words, the results of day-to-day operations in the government. We didn't necessarily change the written words of the Constitution, but it led to changes as a result of the changes of the day-to-day operations in government. So 3 ways to do that. 3 ways to informally amend the Constitution. Let's go back and make this a little different color here. Basic legislation, so pass laws that spell out or elaborate on the Constitution's provisions. The Constitution created the office of the Vice President and President, right? It's pretty clearly stated. But Congress, through other powers, through its powers, created many departments and offices in the executive branch. The Commerce Clause is an example that is near and dear to my heart. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution has, through a series of Supreme Court decisions, expanded over time. The Interstate Commerce Clause is expanded extensively over time. And this is where the national government gains a lot of its power. Executive action, how the president uses his power to also informally. So this is the Commerce Clause, the court, the Congress creating departments and offices of the executive branch. Now, like for example, the number of Supreme Court justices is not set at 9 by the Constitution. It's set at 9 by congressional statute, and can be changed by Congress. And there's been threats to do that in the past. Executive action. The president, this is how the president uses his power to also informally amends the Constitution. Congress has the power to declare war. The president is the commander-in-chief, one of his many hats that he wears. So the president has sent troops to fight without a declaration of war. So this is Vietnam, Korea. There's been in wars in the Middle East, recently Iraq, and wars in Iraq recently, the wars in Afghanistan that we've fought. We call them wars, but Congress has not officially declared war. The president has certain abilities to do that for some periods of time, to be able to send troops in without a formal declaration of war for Congress, even though it's stated in the Constitution that Congress shall declare war. Another example of executive agreement is a pact made by the president directly with the head of a foreign state. They actually have the same effect as treaties, but do not need Senate approval. The problem becomes sometimes when you get a new president, and the new president has different foreign policy priorities. So therefore, the pact made directly with the head of a foreign state may be negated, but a treaty that requires 2/3 of the Senate approval may have more weight over the course of many administrations. Court decisions, interpreting and applying the Constitution to cases the court decides. Judicial review. This is, how is a case that comes before the court, how are they interpreting the Constitution? If they change the way they interpret the Constitution, they've changed what's called the precedent. And when they change the precedent, it often changes how the Constitution is shaped and interpreted. Party practice is a little less common, shaping the process through which of government through party politics. For example, the Electoral College reflects each state's popular vote because of political parties. They changed the Electoral College some time ago to reflect each state's popular vote because the parties wanted it that way. A custom, establishing precedent, thereby shaping process. So the vice president becoming president had happened prior to the passage of the 25th Amendment numerous times. Lyndon Johnson, Andrew Johnson, the person, excuse me, the anyways, I'm thinking the other ones that have been assassinated and have taken over in the 1800s, whose names are eluding me right now. But you get the idea. The vice president had become president even before the passage of the 25th Amendment, which lays out the progression a little bit better. The powers and the duties of the president are taken by the VP. Now the VP takes over the office itself in the event of death or other reason not able to carry out the duties. Not just the powers and duties of the president. They actually are sworn in to the presidency and take over the presidency. Oh, the other one I was trying to think of, excuse me, was FDR when he died, and Truman taking over the, the president, the office of the powers of the president. And then like when Nixon resigned, for example, would be an example where Gerald Ford was actually, because the 25th Amendment was passed by then, was actually sworn in as president of the United States, and took the oath of office and assumed the actual office of the president. So you may have to stop these at certain points, but these are some examples of how, again, of how the Constitution has been informally amended. And in many ways, this has had more of an effect on the Constitution and its the amendment than the actual formal amendment process, because the formal amendment process is so laborious.